Okay, under the seat, that connector slings around the back side of that wire. But before any of this, go to the breaker in the back, and this heater has its own separate breaker back in the electrical compartment, and trip that so it's off, so you've got no power to this thing. First step is to take the seat off, take the swivel off, and then the next step is this intake cap. It slides off, I think just by friction, this guy, and then it kind of has to stay down there maybe because I can't get it out. That's okay. And then this cap comes off, this one. And the way you do that is there's just two tabs. You lift those tabs, this comes right off. What we're trying to do is get into here. Okay, once these screws are out, you can lift this up. And down here, you'll see a little clip where you can release these two wires that go to that plug, which I think is the igniter. All right, just making a note that this connector does not have to be removed. So once you lift it up, you can see that gray connector right there with all the wires. We're gonna unplug that. Okay, and then to pull this boot, you want to support the wires as you slide it along so that you're not yanking on any of this stuff. So touch the boot and the wire on either side. Carefully slide that out of the way. Now you've got access down and you can see that hex component. We have to loosen that and remove it. All right, this is the tool. And it has a big slot on it so that it can go around the wires and onto the, there we go. And I think this is 12 millimeters, but this is it. It's very special. And this tool is just a 1/4 inch, socket end, hex end on it. So you can use a 1/4 inch socket. Okay, and then you want to support this real good as you torque it. You only want torque applied, and it should break free quite easily. Okay, I do need to remove that gray connector because to unscrew this, it needs to be free. I need to spin the whole thing around, so it's got to come off of there. So we will figure that out. Okay, yeah. That paddle with the screwdriver, you pushed it down that direction and it goes click. Okay, so I have to free up this wire so that I can spin the whole thing around, but I'm having a really hard time getting that gray connector off. What I can do is come over here, take that connector off, feed that through, feed the whole thing through there, back around, and then I think I'm okay. So yeah, I think the way I did it is I pushed them together, and then I see where my thumb is, I push that way, and I think that drops that paddle down. There now. I guess I pulled it that way. Got my thumb in there and then just gave it a gentle pull and it released. Okay, so now that's out. Of course that slides right out. I'm going to feed this whole thing around the underside of this, in this passage here. Okay, that turned out to be pretty easy. Once I lowered this yellow clip, kind of pushed it that way with a screwdriver quite easily. It went click. Then I can pull the gray thing this way like a drawer, and when I can get my hands around it, I pulled it in that direction, and then the whole thing just came apart, which, so that was pretty easy. So now I can get this stupid thing out of the way. Now this is free to rotate, and I can finally get to the part. Okay, so I've got my socket in there with the wires coming out, and I'm ready to remove it. I'm going to have to spin this whole wire as I do it. Okay, now it's out. There it is. There's the glow plug. Looks pretty clean to me. I'm going to set that over there. You have to be very careful on all this stuff. If you break a wire or something, oh boy. So there's where I'm headed next. Tool we're using are these picks. I've got a 90 degree and then an offset pick. Between the two of those, I should be able to get that thing out. Okay, the trick was to use the offset pick. This right angle one is just too big. And then it's most of the way out now. Now I just need small needle nose pliers and I'll pull it right out. Okay, there it is. It's definitely dirty. I don't know if that's bad or okay, but all right. Now I actually need this dental tool to go down into the opening now and clear out the side port. That's really hard to film, but if you go down here and look, there's a tiny hole on the side of that chamber. We're just going to clear it out. Okay, this is the new screen, and then the black thing is a tool, a one-time use tool. It sets the screen in at the proper depth. The screen has 3 indents on it. Those go away. Those are on the opposite side of where the hole is in the chamber. And if you look in here, really hard to, okay, there's the hole. All right, so I used these small pliers to carefully position that right there. Now I'm going to use the tool to set the depth. And when that bottoms out, then you're at the right depth and you can just remove this like that. Okay, so with this awkward bundle, we just start screwing it in by hand. Okay, so I put the slotted socket on with the wrench, and I'm just gonna make it snug. It does not require high torque at all. So just hand snug. Okay, so that glow plug is back in. Now we can continue to put it back together again. First thing I'm going to do is very carefully put that boot back in, and using the wire to counter the pressure on that boot. Okay, the boot's back in. Okay, now I'm going to feed this wire harness back underneath this cavity into position. Okay, now it's roughly in position. And I'm going to put this connector back into there. So I'm not totally sure how to do that yet. Okay, to reinstall that connector, I just inserted it firmly, and then you slide the gray carriage back into place until it clicks, and then you raise the yellow lever to this position. Okay, and then once the connectors are done, then this goes back in. There's several pins underneath here, so carefully line it up and then squeeze it down, and then we're going to put these screws back in. Okay, so these 3 screws are back in, and then this cable kind of sits right there, and this one just goes in like that. And then this gets seated back in. So now this is done. I just have to reconnect that. Okay, finally when you're in here, check these mounting bolts, make sure they're still snug. There's 4 of them. Okay, finally before you button it up, make sure you've zip tie all these things down so they don't vibrate too much. And that's about it. Okay, cap is back on, set all the way down. These tabs are pressed back in. They should snap into place. This cover is back on. Everything is zip tied. The mounting bolts were a little loose, so I did tighten those. Even though there's lock washers on there, they somehow got a little bit loose. Okay, and put the swivel base back on. I haven't done it yet, but I've laid it in place. This harness goes through that hole in the fabric. Of course, the fabric gets bolted down. And then it comes through the hole like that. So now we're going to screw down the base. Okay, finally, when the seat is back in, really hard to film this, but make sure you hook up that connector there. I don't know if that helps at all.